Why is it that we think we have to know in order to validate our knowing? Every place you can't hold a boundary is likely a place you haven't yet heard your own soul speak. This voice says, look over here. We've been given a map, but not taught how to read the compass. Most women in the second half of life don't have a boundary problem. They have a listening problem. The boundary you can't hold is the one you can't hear yet, because somewhere along the way, you were taught to override that part of you that's known the answer all along. There is a voice that's been trying to reach you, and this voice isn't loud or insistent or demanding. This voice gently taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, look over here. Today, we're going to name that voice and what it actually is, where it speaks from, and why your boundaries become obvious the moment you finally listen to it. Welcome to Soul Knows the Way, a podcast for women in the second half of life who sense a soul hunger they can no longer ignore, a longing for depth, truth, and a life lived from the inside out. I'm Kim Marie, soul guide and author, and I'm here to walk the journey with you. Today, we are listening for what has been trying to talk to us and is ready to be heard. In our last conversation, in the last podcast episode, we explored what it looks and feels like to articulate. This is the key of liberating your true voice into the world. Now, today's key number 6, which is part of the 7 Keys to Reclaim Your Soul series that we've been working with. There's a link in the description or the show notes. If you haven't gotten it, be sure to check it out. It's a wonderful tool to help you truly unlock the inner wisdom of your soul. This guide and this key that we're going to be working on, key number 6, actually allows us to speak our truth more fully as it helps us to hear it. This is called the Intuit key, which, among many things, offers us the practicality of boundary setting that so many of us have found challenging in our lives. I have so many women that I work with that say this is one of the most challenging things that they have, either setting the boundaries or holding them. We have to be able to recognize the direction of our own soul telling us where the boundary line actually is. Now, before I talk more about what this key opens, this Intuit key, I want to name what it feels like when this key is closed, because so many women have lived with a closed channel for so long that they've forgotten what listening even feels like. I mean, true, deep listening. So this closed channel might look like endless second guessing. That never-ending pros and cons list where we go back and forth until the moment is past. The moment that we needed to decide is gone. And maybe it's a yes when something deeper in you said no, and then you have this resentment or anger or frustration after. Maybe you know why, or maybe you're not even sure why. Maybe it shows up asking 5 different people before checking in with yourself. Maybe your boundaries are really strong on paper, but they collapse the moment someone pushes back. And maybe you have decision fatigue because you're never quite trusting the decision that you make, not to mention taking forever to make that decision. Maybe there's something that shows up as, I knew it, the moment after the fact, knowing you knew, not really knowing how you knew, but gosh, not following it. Why is it that we think we have to know in order to validate our knowing? Or maybe you read every book, listen to every podcast, and you're still not really knowing what you want to know. It's not that you don't know or don't have tremendous wisdom to draw from. It's that you've never been encouraged or taught to truly, deeply listen. And no amount of strategy or external source can replace the deep inner voice that you've neglected to tune into. So many of these ways in which intuition gets blocked have shown up in me as well over the years. Those subtle knowings and those bigger knowings and the ways that they showed up. Some of them I paid attention to, and some of them I didn't. But I'll be honest, I can't recall a single time I paid attention to that subtle little voice that made no sense in the moment and regretted it. But I could list probably hundreds of times I didn't listen over the years and wished I had. These showed up in times like impulse decisions or impulse purchases or activities or relationships or interactions that really were not the best for me or in the best interest of my soul and my future. They showed up in sensing that something was off and pressing forward anyway, which resulted in tremendous adrenal fatigue, resulted in maybe the wrong timing. It wasn't meant to happen at that time. And definitely also in ways that tested my capacity when I wasn't necessarily ready. I often also would sense something was right, even though it still felt scary, and I would give in to the fear. Even though something in me really wanted to do it, I wouldn't take the risk. I'd say no to the opportunity or the relationship or the experience. We all have these. Some are more memorable and impactful than others. But the reality is that we've all had very little to model healthy listening after. We've never really learned how to listen more deeply with that intuitive sense that is built into our nature. This, again, is that notion of our overculture offering us the wrong medicine. There's a tendency for the overculture to prescribe to us the idea that we just need to think harder. We need to gather more data. We need to ask more experts and optimize the process. We need to do it now and first and fast. Oh, and get a second opinion too, right? It's not that these things are wrong or bad. It's just that they don't reach what's actually happening, and they leave out a tremendous part of the way in which we learn to know things and understand things, and the way in which we can move forward in our lives. What's actually happening is that your soul's been speaking, and you've been trained to call her unreliable, not measurable, maybe without ground or any kind of proof. And our culture is organized around this need for certainty and precision and control and what is measurable. And these things cannot help women whose deepest knowing arrives in these softer voices, in these subtle ways, in these hints and images and inexplicable deeper knowing. Our dreams and the body itself hold much of this deeper knowing, and we've ignored them largely. We've been given a map in many ways, but not taught how to read the compass we were born with. I like thinking about it that way, this compass that we're born with. How amazing to think about that we have something there, and how sad that we've not been taught to work with it. Your intuition is not meant to be disregarded. It's a deep knowing without knowing why or how it came to you, and yet a knowing deeply within you. It's the most accurate boundary instrument, I believe, that you have. Every place you can't hold a boundary is likely a place that you haven't yet heard your own soul speak and honor what it spoke. So, what is intuition, really? Well, it's kind of like love in our love key, our key number 4. In some ways, it's very difficult to pinpoint, to specifically define. And yet I think most of us have a sense of what it's all about. We know that there's this deeper inner wisdom or this inner way of seeing and knowing that's not measurable. It's often a felt sense beneath the noise of the head, often felt deeper in the body, like that gut feeling, or this voice that taps us on the shoulder and says, look over here, check this out. Are you paying attention to that? You've missed something. You've forgotten something. And it allows us to know our yes when we actually mean yes, and no when we actually mean no. And these apply beneath the polite and expected and the strategic methods. Our intuition is a space that defies reason. It opens us to new ways of knowing and new perspectives. It comes from the depths, like our body, deep within our cells and our cellular memory, the earth itself, what is often called the underworld, like our shadow territory, the subconscious territory. And it comes as the wisdom of your soul, this instinctual knowing, what our bones and our belly already seem to understand. But it's not just from the depths, it's also from the heights. It's this expression that we sometimes feel illuminated with by spirit, or what's often known as the other world or the miraculous that seems impossible, whispered to us from beyond our own typical knowing. Both of these, those messages from the depths and the messages from the heights, are inner wisdom. And both are yours to listen to. And sadly, the overculture dismisses both. Our body is just feelings. The other world is just imagination. The intuit key on our journey to unlock the wisdom of our soul undoes that dismissal. And just as all the other keys were connected with a chakra in the energetic body of our being, the intuit key is aligned with or connected with the third eye chakra, right above the brow. And it is the inner eye, the seat of seeing what cannot be seen with outer vision. When this inner eye is closed, we can only see what's right in front of us, sometimes not even truly seeing that. And when it opens, we begin to see what's also true and possible beyond the surface, beyond what's right in front of us. This connects us to a wisdom way of knowing. This is not linear or constructed or assembled from that pros and cons list. It arrives whole in itself. It might show up in an image or a very clear feeling, those goosebumps, or a clarity from out of nowhere that you can't really quite name. Sometimes we even get these moments, these flashes of intuition before the question we have is even fully formed. The interesting thing about this wisdom way of knowing is that it's actually very difficult to argue with or wish into existence. It can really only be listened for. We could argue that it lives in the right brain, a more feminine expression of the way that we live and work in the world. Certainly it lives in our body, in our deeper senses and sensory experience. I love the picture of it living in the space between the notes of the music. Or you could think of it as the silence between the thoughts that we have in the day-to-day. It's not an absence of thinking. It's a different way of thinking, one that our culture has disregarded for far too long. But thankfully, our second half of life, because of the insistence of our soul, is determined to connect with it. In fact, your power to connect with it is amplified as you shift into this second half of your life, this time of transition. So, how do we actually live from this place of deeper intuitive knowing? Well, we might try slowing the decisions we have to make down enough for that subtle knowing to show up, for that little tap on the shoulder to express. The slowing down allows us to connect in the present moment with the space between the thoughts, right? And it helps us drop out of our head. This is another piece. Like, I get so many women that I coach that are really struggling to get out of the headspace, the analyzing, the intellectualizing, and drop into the heart, drop into the body, into the felt sense. This is so important in the realm of intuition. We also might notice in the moment after we pose a question, before the answering comes, and just pause and see where the wisdom might enter. I like to call it waiting for the after image. I've come to see that a lot of times if I pose a question to the universe, to the Great Mother, to Great Spirit, sometimes it takes like 3 days. There's a 3.5 day after image period that suddenly something will pop in. It's really fun to record in a journal when you ask the question and then come back to when did the answer show up and start to notice some of these kinds of things. Because sometimes I think it just takes a certain amount of time for that question to be integrated in our whole body. And so we might get that after image. But there are also times when we need to trust the first knowing. Like, what's the first response, the quick response? But trust it holistically, like from a place of coherence of our thought and our feeling, our felt sense, and our will, our capacity to act. And go ahead and make that decision before all of the second guessing starts. We want to be sure that we are embodying the moment to connect with this. And there's the embodying this moment practice in the activation section of this key in the 7 Keys guide. So it offers a fuller way to inhabit this orientation. So be sure to download that. I won't repeat the full practice here. It lives in the guide for you to return to anytime. So download your free copy if you haven't yet. Our intuition is very much connected to ultimately how our soul speaks. And our soul does not speak in linear sentences. She often speaks through things we might not consider language to listen to, like the dreams we have at night. You might want to think about keeping a dream journal, even if you don't quite know what that's all about. I work with a lot of dream work in my Sacred Nights of Winter practice when it comes to winter solstice time, and it's so powerful and very prophetic to help guide us in the new year and stay aligned with our soul. Dreams are incredibly powerful, and ancient indigenous cultures often revered dreams or space in the dream time as a way of guiding them forward and understanding what comes next for the tribe, for the individual, for the relationship, or whatever it is. Our soul also likes to speak in symbols. This is why I also love astrology, because it speaks through the stars. And astrology is full of all those wonderful symbols, the glyphs for the planets and the constellations. And of course, some of the most ancient language came through in symbols, in these glyphs. The symbols might include metaphors or even oracles. The soul speaks in archetypes. That's another reason I love fairy tales and offer a monthly Wisdom of Fairy Tales circle that is completely available to anyone through my Soulstead community. So you might want to check that out as well. My free Soulstead community, and then the Wisdom of Fairy Tales are available for a small fee each month. And these archetypes come to us through myths, through fairy tales, even through nature. And also, I love to look at sacred texts and scripture for archetypes, not reading it literally, but looking for the archetypal wisdom in it that actually can help my own soul language speak to me through my intuitive nature. And of course, images like art and even just imagery itself and the imagination itself. I'm not talking about fantasy here. We're not talking about fantasizing, but rather there is something to be said for being able to picture yourself experiencing the very thing that you are wanting to experience and tapping into and tuning into that image that perhaps helps you relate to that thing. I've done meditation work where I was able to literally make my skin fill up with goosebumps as if I was outdoors in sub-zero temperatures. And feel super, super hot as if I was inside of a sweat lodge just through the imagining. It's amazing what our mind can do. And of course, we don't have to go to those extremes, but just being able to imagine maybe the healing of the pain that we feel in our knee, to give some attention to the broken heart that we have, and imagine, create imagery around how does it heal. It's very powerful, this soul language of imagery. It shows up, soul language also shows up with the muse, the one who shows up when we are open to create. And creativity is another path of soul language, and this urge to make something when we step into these flow moments, these spaces where time seems to disappear. Soul language also shows up in synchronicities and signs. It comes out of the other world or the underworld, the idea of ancestors, spirit beings, also shadow work and energy work, and that experience of the energy that moves through our body. Soul language is also found in the alchemical, the magic, the transformative, the metaphysical. It's in our depth. It's in our emotions. Our emotions are a tremendous way that the soul communicates with us, and our body's felt sense. Most of us can at least tap into those every single day. Each one of these is a language we can learn, but you don't have to choose one. You don't have to go out of your way to learn them all. Your soul will speak in whatever language you're able to hear, and it knows what you're able to hear. The work is in learning to recognize your soul's voice, no matter how she may arrive. Now, there are three main senses, we could call them, intuitive senses, you could say. There's the imagination, which is considered spiritual seeing. It's what arrives or is created through image, through vision, through picture. I talked a little bit about imagery before. There's intuition, which is considered spiritual knowing. And it's what tends to arrive almost as a certainty without reason or explanation. And then there's inspiration, which is spiritual hearing. It arrives as a voice, a word, or a song. And through all three of these, our soul reaches us. These are how our soul reaches us. You could take that list I shared of the different methods of soul language and probably find how they might apply to any one of these: imagination, intuition, inspiration. All three rely on a felt sense, not an intellectual grasping of them. But naming these kind of helps us recognize which doorway our own soul might use the most. Some of us are really amazing at remembering and being able to understand and know clearly from a dream, let's say. Some of us really can hear specific messages, almost as if a channeling of sorts. And some of us just get this deep gut inner knowing. What we want to do is allow for all of this to exist and to coexist with what exists in the culture at large. But here's the problem. Our current culture tends to lock us into either or, right and wrong, this or that, us and them. And it creates this tremendous polarity that has us suffering, like, which should I choose, this or that? Is the boundary enough to have it be this way versus that way? Well, this intuit key actually requires a different kind of posture. And that posture is neutrality. Now, I want to be really clear. Neutrality is not indifference. It's not a sense of detachment or having no opinion. Neutrality is more like the very still, placid, calm water, and the surface is calm enough that we can see what lies beneath, or maybe what's reflected upon it. From neutrality, we are able to find the both and rather than the either or. This is the sacred feminine way of honoring all that is, rather than collapsing reality into one pole or another. This is why boundaries from the closed channel actually feel more warlike or like a hard, firm protection. I know many women who set these boundaries to protect themselves, and many of us all set certain boundaries, whether they were conscious or unconscious, based on things that happened, maybe traumas that happened in our past. And we find that when we start to look at these, maybe we've protected ourselves for a long time because we had to get through something. Or maybe we've unconsciously guarded ourselves from believing we're lovable or worthy or deserving, and we've put up all these barriers, but they've been in this realm of protection and me against the world, this warlike either or kind of thing. And that's because this channel often feels blocked because we don't trust it. And maybe we couldn't trust it. Most of us probably couldn't trust it when we were young. Our task in this second half of life is to open up to trusting that more and more. And when we can set boundaries from this open channel that isn't about either or, but rather both and, these boundaries simply feel like clarity. There's no enemy required. We keep asking the question, what's the right answer? What should I do? But the real question we need to be asking is, what is my soul saying or seeking beneath all the noise? So coming back to boundaries with this, our boundaries are not some kind of script that we memorize or something we're told to create by our therapist or our coach or a friend. In many ways, I've seen this notion of, oh, you need to set a boundary around that, become this like hard and firm way. And to me, that starts to be back into this either or territory. There's not a softness. The reality is when we block ourselves from the world, we also block ourselves from our growth. Do we need to protect ourselves in certain situations? Absolutely. Do we need to set very firm boundaries in some cases that say no crossing, no way, no how, and I'm just going to completely make sure I never come into contact with this again? Absolutely. Sometimes that happens. But when we can set a boundary that comes from that clearer intuitive knowing, that space where we trust ourselves and we're not expecting the world to figure it out for us or do it for us, it's almost like these boundaries become more obvious when we can finally hear and feel what is ours to say yes to, what is ours to say no to. It just is. It's not performed or structured or forced. It's not a protection against, but rather a knowing that this is just what is. This is what's needed. And there's no enemy involved. There's no anger. There's no bitterness. There's no fear, actually. The boundary problem dissolves as you listen to the depth of your being, not because you've gotten better at standing your ground, but because you finally know where the ground is. You finally know where the ground is. And of course, our root key helped us with that. So many women tend to want to know about the tools. What tools can I use to help me become more intuitive, right? And there are many tools. I work with oracle decks all the time in my seasonal gatherings and my new moon intention setting circles, and for my own weekly intentions and things like that. We can use things like pendulums or the tarot. We can work with energy work. We can use artistic expression as a tool toward intuitive knowing. And there's divination tools of many different kinds. One thing I find people falling into the trap of, though, and I have fallen into this in the past myself, is that we have to understand that the tools are not the wisdom. They are invitations to listen. So the tools are not where your wisdom lives. Your wisdom lives within you. The tools are just mirrors. They reflect back what your soul is already trying to tell you. They offer synchronicities that you might not have noticed otherwise, if you're willing to hear them, if you're ready to hear them. If used well, these tools can help us slow down enough for the wisdom to emerge. Just pausing, taking time to use a tool is more than many of us do to actually tune into that inner wisdom. But if they're used poorly, they can become another expert that you outsource your knowing to. So I want to offer an example of a divination tool with an oracle card drawing. And when I do these drawings, it's about trusting the synchronicity of the moment and the situation and the people involved and the soul, and allowing for my own interpretation and reflection. And when I pull a card for a group situation, like one of my gatherings, I am always inviting those in the gathering to also tune into what do they see? What do they notice in the card? So before I draw a card from this Soul's Journey Oracle, let me show you what it looks like to drop into the head and into the body. It's not going to be a full practice, just enough to settle in. So we want to first receive a deep breath. We want to presence ourselves, ground and center. I actually have another video about grounding and centering and presencing that I will put a link in the description to. We want to notice our feet, the seat of the breath, and drop into the question that we're going to ask with the whole of our being. The whole of our being, like feel into that question. And the question I want to ask today is, dear soul, what would my viewers feel supported or inspired by to help them turn their intuit key? So let's take a moment here to pull a card from this deck. And I don't do it with any kind of fancy fanfare or any particular method. I do really love to shuffle the cards, take a moment to be with the cards. I've always usually spent some time connecting with a deck in the first place. Like if I first get a deck in the mail delivered to me, I will go through and touch each card individually, kind of going through them, something like this, just looking and letting my energy touch them. I love to take a deck and hold it kind of like this and, and sort of knock it as if I'm intentionally knocking out any energy that doesn't belong and allowing my energy of touching them. I especially like to do that before I go touching each one or shuffling them, because it infuses the deck with my own energy, my own soul forces. And so there's an element here of just holding that question. What do we need to know for our soul journey forward? And then you can spread them out on a table. You can just, flip the first card. You can split the deck and pull them, whatever you like to do, whatever you feel called to do. I like to kind of fan them out. And then I just take a moment and I look at the deck and I trust where my eyes are going. And I trust the card that seems to be glowing almost. It's like, for me, it's a seeing, maybe. And that is where I begin to know what is needed or what card to be drawn. And this is so lovely. We have this card, grateful for life, be thankful for your gifts. Grateful for life, be thankful for your gifts. This is so lovely in this beautiful woman opening up. You may not see it fully from the distance, and this is where it would be more focused. But basically, there's this beautiful woman, and she has her hands kind of up like this. And the colors, of course, there's this light that she's looking up toward, that she's opening toward, and she's opening her hands with this expression of gratitude. I love when I draw a card to sit with its imagery and color, with the expression, and to really tune into the felt response of this. The question of what do the viewers need, to honor this soul path that unlocks the intuit key. Oh my goodness, how amazing just to feel into this, open to the gratitude that we have this inner compass. We want to trust the felt response, not the intellectual one when we're doing this. And just let the message land in our bodies, not try to analyze it all in our heads. And so I also love to look at the colors and the feel of this. There's something here in the space that reminds me of a peacock feather. And there's a level of animal medicine that sometimes can come in, and you can look up spirit animal medicine to find out what that means. But peacock feathers have this eye of God, as it's known, in their feathers with this circular eye shape that's there. And it's reminding me of that, so I'm just tuning into, what do I see? What do I notice? And if I want to open to my intuit key, and I was asking, how do I do that? What I would look at this card with is to open up and say, I need to look to spirit. I need to open up. I need to allow for the eye of spirit, the eye of God, to penetrate into me and maybe open my eye to God. It's every time I draw a card, no matter what we're doing, what group we're in, what deck I'm using, somehow it seems to fit. There's a synchronicity. And notice I didn't ask the card what to do. I'm just using the card to slow myself down enough to hear what soul has to say. I'm trusting in the moment for soul to speak, and I'm doing my best to just listen attentively. Now, I will put the link to the card deck in the description so that you have that in case you were curious about the deck, the Soul's Journey deck. I think it's lovely and very beautiful and inspiring. Any oracle deck will do. And if you'd like, I have this lovely set of 12 cards that is a free download as well. And it's actually guidance from the 12 constellations, our heavenly wisdom keepers, that you might enjoy. It's my free balance and empowerment cards. And I want to just take a brief moment to show them to you. So in these cards, and there's 12 of them, there's a little booklet that comes with it first. And then the last 6 pages are the cards. And you'll ultimately, there's 2 cards on each page, and it fills a page, and you print them out. And ideally, I've printed mine. You can kind of hear this on cardstock, which makes them a little firmer, which is really nice because when I have a card printed, then if it's in cardstock, it will sit. It will sit. And those listening on the podcast, I'm actually demonstrating them on the video version of the podcast. If you're not watching on video, I've got the card opened and it's just half folded, and it can sit on your altar and be something that you work with. And each of these cards is a message from a zodiacal constellation. And then on the back, there's some definition of false power, false powerlessness. I talked about that in some of the earlier episodes. And a contemplation on the cosmic gifts or virtues. And virtues are the mean between the too much and the too little. They help us find the both and. They help us find that sacred feminine center. And these cards are also, in such a lovely way, able to be colored. They're purposely drawn very light so that you can color them in whatever way you wish. Or the lines are so light, you could almost redraw the image of the star that's on the front. And they have different words on them that may resonate with you. And sometimes I like to just look through them. And if there's a word at the feet or hands of the stars on the front, I trust it. And I'm like, okay, that's what I'm feeling right now. Or maybe that's what I feel like I need to work with, or that's popping out at me in the moment. This is just another divination tool. It's another way to work. Or you can just work with each card based on when the sun is moving through that particular constellation. So a free tool, go ahead and download it down below. I would love for you to have this and be able to work with this. The idea, though, is that these tools serve our listening. Oracle decks, tarot, pendulums, and energy work, intuitive movement, artistic expression, and journaling and dream work. Explore them all. Use them. Play with them. But remember, the tool is the doorway, not the destination. If you find yourself unable to make a decision without the card, without one of these tools, then The listening hasn't yet been built. The card is meant to teach you to listen, not to replace your listening. Over time, you'll notice that you don't really need the card. And as we get better at this, we'll start to notice that we are better at listening to our intuition in everyday, ordinary moments. We start to pause before saying yes, and we let the body answer before the mouth does. That decision we keep stewing over. And we notice that the stewing itself is a sign that the listening hasn't happened yet. And unfortunately, that indecision is the ultimate suffering, whereas a decision is freedom. And maybe we start to feel like we're able to make those decisions more. Maybe we actually listen to that whisper before the meeting or the conversation or the choice that we're making. Maybe we actually jot down a dream that we remembered, a fragment of, taking it seriously instead of dismissing it. Or we honor that feeling when we walk into a room and something is off, and we trust it before we have any evidence of it. The world we live in is very energetically noisy in a way that our ancestors did not have to deal with or navigate. We're getting constant input, constant opinions, constant scrolling. I mean, I can't even go to the gas station without screens talking to me, right? Our inner wisdom needs quiet to be heard, but not silence necessarily. It needs uncluttered space. We created space with the empty key, key number 2. We need to implement practices to keep our energy clean and clear. And that means allowing for time away from all the input, for time in nature, for that embodying the moment practice in your 7 keys guide, for the work of the empty key and the work of the root key, the work of all the keys. I teach and guide my Solace members how to manage and tend their energy very regularly and keep their inner wisdom channels open and clear. If you're curious about that, there's a link in the description. I'd love for you to check out Solace. You're not lacking in intuition or inner wisdom. In fact, your well of wisdom in the second half of life, by the time you hit that point in your journey, is so deep. Perhaps you're just inwardly cluttered. And the clutter's not your fault, but the clearing is your work. The lower keys set this up for us. Without the root, there's no ground from which to listen. The body can't receive what it can't stand inside. Without the empty key, there's no space in the vessel for the whisper to land. Without the claim key, we don't believe we have the authority to trust what it is that we hear. Without that love key, we can't hold what comes through with the tenderness it requires. Without the articulate key that we went through in our last episode, we can't express what our soul has spoken. This is why these keys aren't some kind of checklist or linear pattern. They actually work together, opening and supporting and activating one another. The intuit key is turned on by the others while also helping refine and further open the others. So check out the earlier episodes if you haven't for more on those prior keys. Make sure that you take a moment to download your 7 keys to reclaim your soul, this free guide. And it's a companion to the podcast a companion to it. The link is below. And remember that our intuition strengthens with witness. It helps to have other women reflecting back to us what we almost said but didn't quite trust, or what we said and we can actually begin to trust. A closed channel rarely opens fully in isolation. We need each other. We are initiated by our relationships. And Solace is one of those places. It's a soul sanctuary where listening gets practiced, refined, and trusted over time. Now, I'll share more on Solace in future episodes, I'm sure. But for now, just know that it's there and the door's open when your soul is ready. Your intuition has been speaking your whole life from the depths of your body and from the heights of the other world. From the soul of the world. It's been speaking to you from the soul of the world, patiently waiting for you to turn toward her. The boundary you've been struggling to hold or set is the one that you've not yet heard. The decision you can't make is the one you're making with the wrong part of yourself. The voice you've been outsourcing has been within you all along. So listen for the soul guidance. It's so much closer than you think. Next time, we will explore the seventh and final key of the 7 keys to reclaim your soul. It's called the midwife key. It's the key of birthing the life your soul's been calling you to into actual form. And once you can hear the intuitive inner wisdom of your soul, she'll start speaking and asking you to bring her into the world more fully. So I'll see you there. Until next time, keep tuning in to the language of soul, because soul knows the way.